And Dan, I kind of like to start off with you a little bit because, there's a saying that, plan your work and work your plan. And social media is no different than that. What is a social media calendar and why is it important in developing and maintaining a successful and productive social media presence?
Thanks, David. It's interesting, and boy, that's an old bio. I got a few more months than a decade, but I'm glad to be here, and I appreciate ARMO having me on. So thanks. And the calendar thing is interesting as more and more channels open up in the social space, and I know your members are everything from manufacturers to restorers and kind of everything in between. So the needs of every individual organization are going to be different. And we have, we work with about 35 different companies in the aftermarket, and some are trying to be successful across all platforms, and some are kind of choosing to focus on one or two that have the best chance of conversion into a customer. So, it's a lot to handle, especially when you start to consider that algorithms are constantly changing. If you're working on Instagram the same way today that you were 2 or 3 years ago, you're not going to be successful. So it's really critical that you stay on top of kind of not only the right platform, but the right algorithm and the right strategy. So in our agency, one of the things that we work really hard on is we're sort of omnivorous when it comes to the actual scheduling tool. We have some stuff that we've developed in-house in terms of both scheduling and reporting. We have some clients that are using a CRM for scheduling. Some are using something like HubSpot. So if the client has an in-house system, we'll use it. If they want to use our system, we can. But at the end of the day, sometimes we're even using a Google Sheet if that's the way they prefer to, kind of plan. But for me and for the strategy we've taken over the last few years, especially, coordinating your social content can be challenging. And so you want to have kind of a blended content strategy where some of it is mapped out over the course of, in some cases we're doing a week at a time. In some cases we'll do up to a month at a time. But if you're going that far out and you're saying, hey, look, I've got new products I want to promote, I've got some services I want to promote, maybe I've got a build that I want to promote, and you're constantly documenting stages of that build, that kind of evergreen content is great to kind of spread out over the course of a couple of weeks or even a month. And it makes it a lot easier. So under the gun trying to figure out what post you're going to get up that day. It also allows you to have the bandwidth to kind of take a step back and study the back end data and figure out, hey, turns out we get more interaction with this type of caption, this type of content, this type of timing when we put the post up. So the calendar function does allow you to take a little bit more time and be a little more thoughtful in not only what kind of content you're curating, but how you're posting it. But I would say the asterisk on that is it's important to leave windows for spontaneity. And you really do want to get stuff up at least once in a while, sprinkle in that content where either you're sort of doing what we call newsjacking, where you're trying to get a post up that's sort of relevant to something that's happening in the current media cycle or happening in the feed in real time. Or, as an example, coming out of the SEMA show and then the PRI show, we blocked out content going up to the show and we blocked out content coming out of the show. But on site at SEMA, for most of our clients, a lot of the stuff we were doing was happening on the fly in real time. And it's just because you don't really know what is going to really hit hard with people until you're there. So you really do want to take that kind of blended approach where you're both being thoughtful and sort of you're thinking long-term about your content, but also you have enough spontaneity that you're engaging to your audience.
Is there a sweet spot that you find as far as the calendar goes? You mentioned a week, a month. Is there, and leaving enough holes in it, it of course pushes it out a little bit as well, right? Because you're building in gaps.
Yeah, so it kind of depends on the company and on who your audience is, and that is something more than almost any other thing we do when we start working with a new brand. One of the first things we do is we do some pretty in-depth market research. We try to figure out who is your current follower on social, who do you want them to be, who is your audience, who is your customer. How are they engaging? How are they interacting? What is, in some cases, we'll start working with companies and it turns out half their audience is bots and, maybe some prior agency or some prior marketing person bot followers, which is cancer. You do not ever want to do that. So really, it's sort of first figuring out who is our audience, who is our customer, how do they interact with our content, what kind of content do they want to see. You have to also kind of figure out the algorithm. Like if you're on Instagram right now, you're not doing some sort of motion content, you've got a problem. Even though I personally get sort of annoyed with all the sort of little, wannabe TikTok videos that Instagram's making us use, that's what the algorithm wants to see. So there is an element of that kind of balance where you're trying to kind of make the platform happy while also trying to appease your followers. But for us, we try not to go more than 2 weeks at a time. That gives you enough leeway to kind of have some thought and have some planning, but also really, it allows you to still continue to evolve as the platform and its needs continue to change. When you start getting out to a month or even beyond a month, we have some corporate clients that do like to have a month at a time, and maybe 6 or 7 of our accounts, we do that because an internal VP of marketing wants to just see that so he can check it off his box, and we'll do that. But again, we have to leave more holes in that, because when you're starting to get more than a month out, it's really hard to figure out what's going to happen sort of in the news cycle and in the social space a month from now.
It's a real active participation sport. It really
Absolutely.
is. Thank you for that. Barry, I have some questions for you. How does a person go about, in your experience, creating a social media calendar? And what are the key points that should be on those calendars? How detailed should they be?
Well, Dan touched on a lot of that stuff. You really have to understand your target audience, who you're speaking to. And there's a lot of different tools out there for calendaring, but you can start basically with a Word doc and or a calendar in your system, work with your team to lay out when you want to post, what you want to post, how you want to post it. And then you can take and move that into one of the tools. Meta has a free business suite where you can post to Facebook and Instagram, and that will tell you that sometimes that tells you when your audience is online. There's other paid tools like Loomly, Hootsuite, Buffer, Sprout Social, paid tools that you can use. But I think the biggest thing is to take and spend that time doing your homework on your customer, pay attention to what your customer is doing online, look at what your competitors are doing, how the interactions are going and how they're commenting and things like that. And then also look at what you've done in the past. If you're already on social media, a lot of people said they were. Look at your insights and determine what posts are trending, which ones are actually getting the interactions, because interactions, likes, comments, shares, things like that are huge. And if you pay attention to those insights, you can take and work through your social media calendar and in determining what is best to post for your audience. The biggest thing is to build that trust, right? And also deliver content that will be helpful to them or gives them information about what's going on in your shop, what you're doing in your shop. I think that is all I got on that one.
Okay, Barry. So I guess what I hear both of you guys saying is a calendar isn't the end all. It's almost a place marker in time, but you have to be able to, it has to be modifiable depending on what you're getting in regards to the analytics and the success of what you've done in the past. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, I think too is social media, you can post too much. We had a speaker at PRI last week that said they were working with a company that was posting every day, like 4 or 5 times a day, and it actually hurt them. So you have to think about how often you want to post and pay attention to those insights.